Hi, I'm Lily Peterson.
And I'm Paul Wilson. Welcome to Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro. In this episode, for the first time ever, we have two guests, Jason Beutler and Daniel Fuller from Robosource, where Jason is the CEO and Daniel is the sales leader. But before we dive in, how are things going, Lily?
Good. Nothing new over here. Just enjoying the hot weather we still have in September. But what
I
about
know.
you?
Yeah, same. You always think of September as like the beginning of fall, and I guess it kind of is. You can see the light changing a little, but it's still way too hot.
Yeah.
So yeah, same here. Nothing too exciting. Just kind of settling into the school rhythms with kiddo and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
pretty boring. But
Yeah, I know.
well, today's episode is not boring. It's all about a topic that seems to be everywhere these days, and it's causing a lot of divisiveness, I think, and that's AI. Obviously, a huge, complicated topic, but what are your general thoughts on AI? You're a youth, you're young. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on it. Do you use it very much in your daily life? How do you use it? Are you fully on board or a bit skeptical? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you a little rundown. At first, I was very skeptical because I was like, we've seen the movies. Why are
Yeah.
we, trying to push this? But then when I read more about it and kind of started testing it out myself, it's nice to have it make things a little more easier that take time but aren't necessarily hard things. Like in the workplace, I guess I use it just to help with headlines because I feel like I have certain thoughts, but they're not always said eloquently. And so I'll, type it in there and then edit what they give me back. So it's definitely a team effort with how I use it.
Yeah.
But then I realize I use it a lot more in my day-to-day life than I thought I did with, when you Google something and it brings up the AI summary, I
Hmm.
realize I use that like 40 times a day.
You're right. And that's something it really has crept in. And it's one of the things, like, just to get a little bit into how we make the donuts with sites like Benefits Pro who rely on news and search traffic. It's obviously been something we've had to address because many, many people do exactly what you just described. They read the AI summary and don't always end up clicking on some of the articles. So, as you know, Lily, that's something that's been top of mind. And so many industries are being reshaped in both expected and unexpected ways by AI. And that's one of the things that's come about for us. But yeah, I'm the same way, I guess. To some degree, I was a little skeptical and creeped out at the beginning. And to be honest, there are still areas that do concern me about it. Some of the long term ramifications, I think, of like what it's doing to people's creativity and being willing to think of things in like a longer term sense.
Yeah.
We mention books all the time, but it's kind of like the equivalent of reading three bullet points versus reading a big long novel. They're both may get you to the same point, but kind of what's lost if you skip over on some of the other stuff. So that's one area that I still am kind of a little bit wary of, is just kind of the long term impacts that it could have on
I
people
agree.
and creativity.
Yeah,
Yeah. But as
I
far as like
agree.
you said, the practical uses, I mean, every day I'm finding new ways to use it. One of the things that Jason and Daniel dig into in our conversation today are just some of the ways that you can kind of fine tune the way you use it. And ever since I heard them talk about that a couple months ago at a conference, I've been using some of these strategies that they mentioned, and it does make such a huge difference. And so, yeah, like you, I mean, I find myself using it in funny ways, like fantasy football draft, or,
Oh my God,
my,
yeah.
yeah, my wife and I, we were planning a vacation, and we just kept asking questions, and kind of that whole idea of like tell it to act as a travel advisor and give you specific things, and it is amazing all the things it can do. So yeah, I've come around, but I will admit that there's still a little bit of wariness, but I love that we kind of got into some of that in today's conversation too.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the interview with Jason and Daniel from Robosource. In this episode, we do talk about the many implications of AI, and we focus especially on its potential impacts on the future of both benefits and healthcare, as well as some practical advice for benefits advisors and others in our industry, based on how it's being used even right now by some of your peers. And of course, as always, we also go down some rabbit trails, including some literal trails, running on them. And we talk about beach volleyball, Brandon Sanderson books, and a recommendation for some of the best shrimp cocktails I've ever had. Oh, and I also take a shot at setting the record for the fastest Skynet reference in Robosource history. All that and more coming up next.
Joining us today are Jason Beutler and Daniel Fuller from Robosource, where Jason is the CEO and Daniel is the sales leader. Welcome to Beyond Benefits, guys.
Thanks a lot. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to have both of you on the show today. So, how are things going in Indianapolis right now?
Well, we're finally getting rain for the first time in like a month, so our lawns will be less brown here soon.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're excited. Just as a company, we're doing a product launch and on September 11th of our new product process coach. And actually, Tim Tebow, like the football player who has a foundation now, he's going to be speaking at that. And so we're just super jazzed about that event and what that means for our company. So
nice. Yeah, we're in the same boat. Rain wise, Denver, it's been a very dry summer. We finally are getting some downpours. And like you said, the lawn is very happy these days. And that sounds very cool. Tim Tebow's got a Denver connection, which is where Lily and I are. So, that'll be
Yes.
a big name to kick things off. Congratulations.
He's our lead investor in our business. So it's fun to have him around and connect with what we're doing.
Very cool. Well, speaking of what you're doing, I thought to kick things off, maybe each of you could just give us a little background about yourselves, touch on your career so far, and then also just talk about your day to day. What do each of you do on a day to day basis? So, Jason, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the CEO of Robosource, which means I do all the things. I'm all over the board. But my passions really are around artificial intelligence and technology. And that's where I find myself spending all my free time. So I actually got to study AI when I was in college back in the mid 90s and have been applying it in various ways for the last 20, I guess almost 30 years now. Wow, that hits different, doesn't it?
I know that always happens to me too.
But no, so Robosource really is an outcropping of a lot of our passion, which is helping people do meaningful work, and that's what I think technology is best for, is allowing people to do work that's actually like impactful and important. So like relationship building, like the human aspects of business, right? Business runs off of people. So if we can use technology to eliminate some of that mundane, repetitive stuff that keeps you from having the actual real relationships and building the real connections that drive a business, that's a major win. And so as artificial intelligence has become more and more, let me say it the other way, has become less and less scary to people, then it has become more accessible to leverage in a lot of these tools so that we can free people up to do the stuff that matters. And that's really what gets me up in the morning. That's what gets me excited. And I've been studying this forever, so it's really fun to get to apply this for a lot of our clients and friends. So
Yeah. If you've been studying it forever, which I know you have, then yeah, this is your time. You've been waiting for this moment because it is everywhere. And we will dig in as this conversation continues into some of the specific nuances for, our listeners. But yeah, first, Daniel, do you want to share a little bit about your background and your day to day?
yeah, sure. So in 2018, I started my own startup and coaching and consulting leaders. And then I stumbled into the benefits world as a benefits advisor and selling a full service HR outsource solution. But one of those things was the benefits side. And that was the part for our business where we would win and lose. So we would have a deal, someone fully on board wanting to move forward, and something with the benefits piece would kill the deal very often. And part of it was because it was so much out of our control. And then secondly, we were stumbling through some very inefficient processes. And the fourth quarter, I think I still have PTSD when it hits to be September, and I'm looking to October because it was, the craziest few months of my life for about 5 years. And when I met Jason, actually, we hired Jason and his team at my former company to help make some of those processes more efficient. And when I saw what AI and other automation tools were capable of, I was blown away because I had spent so much unnecessary time, doing manual things, making my life and clients' life a lot, harder than they needed to be. And so when the opportunity for me came, to come on board with Jason and the team to help, other benefits advisors and other adjacent, businesses in the space, I was really excited to help alleviate the pain that, I had experienced in that seat for so many years.
Absolutely. No, your Q4 PTSD is probably ringing true for a lot of our listeners right now as they head into open enrollment. So yeah, I think
Yep.
they
Yeah.
know where you're coming
It's ringing true for me, so I get it. Daniel, as you mentioned, you have a background in benefits, while Jason is relatively new to this part of the world. Can you talk a little bit about, what brought you to this industry, what caught your attention, and why now?
Coming fresh off the Health Rosetta or Rosetta Fest conference in Denver, I think there's just an outcry in the United States in particular to transform, to reform healthcare. And And there's benefits advisors that are really starting to do that. And then there's, around them TPAs, PBMs that are saying, what has become status quo is criminal in some ways. And so as I was in that world for so long and experienced like some of the criminal activities or just the breakdowns of how employee benefits, like that whole industry works, and who's losing, and that is usually employers, especially small employers, and then also like the employees who are having to pay an exorbitant amount for benefits for their families. And it's people that are making six-figure salaries that are paycheck to paycheck because of health bills. I want to be a part of, helping transform that. And I think us being able to help the advisors and PBMs, et cetera, to be more efficient is a big part of that mission for us, just because they got in it to help people, to help transform this industry. And, they didn't get into it to, manually process spreadsheets. And so if we can help, with that mundane work and help return them to meaningful, impactful work, that's going to really drive the transformation forward.
That's a great answer. Jason, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything. I know Daniel had a lot to do with you guys coming over to this side of the industry, but was there anything that caught your eye that made you think like it was the right time?
As Daniel mentioned, the people that I've met in that industry since working with Daniel, they just love people and they want to help people. And that resonates deeply with who we are as a technology company as well. So they just were the right kind of people to work with. That's really, I think, what drew us into being able to work in that space.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I mean, I've noticed over the decade plus that I've worked in the benefits industry, the same thing. A lot of the people out there are the right kind of people who are truly trying to create change. So I can definitely understand that draw. Well, I've had a chance to, chat with both of you in person at various industry conferences. I think we just missed each other at Health Rosetta, Daniel, but I know we were both there. But I've had the chance to hear you speak on stage with advisors like Ben Connor about some of the cool things that AI can specifically do for advisors. Can you maybe share with our listeners a few examples of how you guys have seen AI move benefits advisors past some of these mundane tasks that you were talking about? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's even some cool things that are developing that are even beyond kind of just the spreadsheets and things like that. So any examples like that?
Yeah. So a few of the projects that we've worked on take that quoting process. So someone says, "Hey, we're interested in a quote," and to an advisor, and that advisor then takes their information. They have to do a lot of manual, mundane steps to get it into many different formats to the various carriers or PBMs, et cetera. They have to submit it to. And really, a lot of that can be automated. But what we're realizing is that that's more of like, I'd call it the walk and run stage of like, if we talk about crawl, walk, run, a lot of where we're going and what we're seeing people want is they're saying, we just need to get AI to the table in our business. And we don't know where to start in that crawl phase. We have people on the side that are writing emails better in ChatGPT or faster, but how can this be another team member that helps us as an assistant to be more efficient at what we do? And so there's examples of like pretty much every workflow that's manual can be automated in some way. And advisors that are listening could probably think of a bunch that are just like, as they go into the fourth quarter, just like, I'm going to have to do a lot of these. All of that is doable. But I think the first step is just like, how are you getting AI to the table, to the conversation table, to start learning and to start teaching it?
I'm going to go a little more philosophical. Artificial intelligence is really the kind of big breakthrough that people are seeing it is the fact that it's able to make a decision for you. And that's like a new thing. I mean, we've had computers that can make black and white decisions, right? Like, that's nothing new. But the fact that it can look at a group of arbitrary data and extract a pattern that a human might see and then be able to adjust and make a decision that is more qualitative than quantitative, that's kind of mind-blowing. And so what I think is starting to happen is people are realizing that like decision making is now something that's kind of can be offloaded to a computer, and we were never able to do that before. And we want to do that, but we have no idea how to start. And so what we're discovering is we really kind of have to take a step back and say, where are decisions made in our business? How are those decisions made? And how do we start to set up our organizational structure in our business in a way that we can enable the computer to start to advise us on how to make those decisions going forward. And that requires kind of rethinking the way that we do business in the first place. And it really requires going back to, everybody's favorite business processes or standard operating procedures, those things that sit on binders on your bookshelf. How do we get it so that the computer can actually understand that, so that it can really respond and help you make decisions as you're getting into these new scenarios that before had to be done by a human, but now the computer is able to start to interact with? So a lot of what we're helping people do is really kind of take that step back and build that solid foundation within their business on, let's get it so that our business processes are digital, they're managed by a computer, so that we can start to take advantage of that decision making. But then there's a whole slew of other things that AI brings to the table. Like, it can talk to a lot of your third-party systems for you. We can look at your business data and your policies and the things that you have, like spreadsheets and PDFs and we can actually surface it at the right time when a decision needs to be made for a person. But we can't do any of that if we don't first get it woven into your day-to-day operations.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Free up time in order to go help people. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So when you're going to benefit advisors, HR, and business leaders, you touched on this a little bit, but what are some of your talking points and pieces of advice when it comes to AI for them?
Yeah, one of my favorite things around this, everyone comes to us and they're like, I want an AI strategy. Okay, like that's usually the starting point, is help me with an AI strategy. And on one hand, I get it. It's a new technology. It does things that frankly kind of feel like magic. And you're like, so I need a strategy on how I'm going to deal with this new world. And that's reasonable. On the other hand, you don't really come up with a strategy for a hammer. Like, a hammer does its job. Like, it's a tool and it does its job. AI is a tool and it does some things really well, and you're going to use it for those things. So what we want to do, and the things it does well, right? It can help you make decisions. It sees patterns in your data like you can't see. And it's able to automate some steps on your behalf. That means that you don't have to be clicking around on a computer. So it does those kinds of things really well. There's some other things behind the scenes, but that gets all real techie, and most businesses don't really know what to do with that. So when people come to me, I'm like, hey, let's take a step back, take a deep breath. Like, yes, the world is changing. Yes, AI is going to be a major part of that. On the flip side, there's still business principles that matter. Where are you taking your business? What do you want to do? Are you looking to grow it? Are you looking to improve the support of your customers? Like what is your strategic initiative? Now, this tool can be really good in helping break down the barriers that are keeping you from making that initiative a part of your business. So let's talk about that. Then, yeah, the strategy for how to roll out AI becomes pretty apparent because you know what barriers you're breaking down. And you know how that tool can apply to accomplish that outcome. So it still comes back to business fundamentals. How are you leading your business? Where are you taking it? What's your vision? How are you going to take care of your customers? And what's keeping you from doing that? And then we can align and use the tool in a way to help break down those barriers so you can do that effectively.
Yeah, I love that. I saw, Daniel, that you recently posted something on LinkedIn that was like a Harry Potter reference with this idea that some people seem to think that AI is the magic bullet, or in the case that the example you used, a magic wand, where, they just wave it and it'll take care of everything. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there are probably two perspectives that people are coming. Some are very scared, intimidated. It's coming for our jobs. What are we going to do? So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. But then on the flip side, or people saying, as soon as I do this, I won't have to do anything else. I'll just wave my magic wand and it'll all be fixed. So I would love both of you just to chat about kind of the different sides of the spectrum and how you kind of walk people through those conversations.
I mean, on one hand, it's the internet, was a major revolution similar to what we're going through now. And it forced people to adapt to a new world with the internet. And then it also created a number of jobs. And so the fear that's around that, I mean, we try to dispel that pretty quickly of like, we learned how to adapt, and there was this entire industry, like take digital marketing as an example, that was created, and people had to adapt and learn new things and new skills to be experts at that job. And so it's very similar with AI. And this kind of answers both of your questions. We also hear, like, one of the things benefits advisors in particular tell us is our account managers are overwhelmed. Their caseload is way too high, yet adding someone to do their job, like the margins aren't justified now, and the time it takes to train them, is a real big commitment on part of the account manager, especially if that person is new to the industry. If they aren't new to the industry, they're probably going to cost a lot more and the margins aren't there. And so kind of what do we do? And our answer is, if you bring AI to the table, it can help reduce the workload of that account manager. And then it gives you a training playbook as well, like Jason said. So it speeds up the time for new people that are coming into the future to be trained, or if something happens to that account manager, they go to a new job, they leave, you've brought AI to the table to document and listen to everything that they do. So the training of the new person or other people on their team that are going to take their responsibilities, that's going to be a faster on-ramp. And so I think what we are trying to reframe that fear of replacement with just let's reframe that toward enhancement. Your biggest fear is like you're going to burn out all of your account managers. So let's help with that and we can go from there.
I love that. And at Rosetta Fest, I don't know if you saw it, Daniel, but Dave Chase was talking about almost the ethical responsibility of people in leadership positions around AI. There can be an AI tax where you just kind of lose people and it guts out your companies and it guts out your communities. Or what you just described, if you do it responsibly, you're not doing this to get rid of jobs. You're doing this to empower your people and create better positions where they can do more good. So I just wanted to jump in because I feel like what you just said kind of resonates with what he said. And I thought that was really an interesting angle of it's on the leaders to some degree to do the right thing with AI and not just use this as a cost-cutting tool to get rid of these positions, but instead to enhance your people and give them opportunities for growth.
Answering those kind of two questions, we kind of have a running joke where we say we should have an internal pool, like a betting pool, about what time of day we hear the word Skynet from one of our prospects, because it's pretty much every day, and it's usually by like 8:30 in the morning. It comes up constantly, and if you're not familiar, Skynet is from the Terminator movies. So it's kind of a running joke that there is a lot of fear. But I also think I've noticed in the last probably 6 months, a lot of that fear is starting to abate because I think people just realize that it's happening. And so similar to, as Daniel mentioned, the internet, like there just comes a point where you just accept this is the road we're on and we're going to have to figure out how to make it work. And I'm starting to sense that a little bit more in the conversations that we're having. The other alternative, man, that is a product of marketing, man. Everything you hear about AI is these big grandiose promises of, it's going to do all of this stuff. And the reality is it just doesn't do that right now. I joke it's kind of like a toddler. There are times where that toddler manipulates you to get a cookie and you're like, you're a genius. You're going to be a rocket scientist. Like that was amazing what you just did there. And then 5 minutes later, you're screaming, don't put your hand on the stove. And that's kind of how AI is, right? There are times where you see it and you're like, what just happened? Like, wow, that's going to put us all out of business because it can do things I didn't even imagine. And then it comes back and it makes up a bunch of information that isn't even real. And you're like, where did that even come from? So I kind of temper a lot of the magic wand stuff. That comes around mostly, again, from marketing, trying to build up hype, and from people who haven't really sat down and worked with it. Because when you work with it, you quickly realize you can tell when somebody uses AI to write. Like, I think my favorite, another good analogy there is I view AI as a multiplier. So like if you were to say there's a scale from -5 to +5, for your talent or for your skill, and 0 is kind of the average. If you're a 1, you've got some basic skill on this, and you apply AI to somebody that's a level 1 on a skill, they're going to look like a level 10. Like they're going to look phenomenal. If you're at 5, you're going to look like a 50, like otherworldly. But there's also the flip side of that. If you're a -1 and you use AI, it's real obvious real quick. like it magnifies your ineptitude. And so you still have to know your topics. You still have to know your skills. You still have to know how to do your job effectively. And AI will magnify your effectiveness, both positive and negative. And so we talk a lot about that and how, this isn't replacing basic business skills. It's enhancing it. And so it's not like we're just going to wave a wand and magically be able to do things we couldn't do before. It's going to take what you're good at and it's going to multiply its effectiveness.
So, because AI does, develop practice and training, like any other skill, what advice do you have for business leaders and advisors and HR professionals about leveling up and continuing to improve those skills?
Specifically with like how you work with AI?
Yeah, and how to not, make it obvious, like you were saying, and not be a negative one.
Yeah. So with AI itself, a couple of things to recognize about it. It is a pattern matching machine. So it's not magic, it's math. And the math is looking for patterns and trying to basically highlight those patterns based upon information that you're asking it. And I could get into all the details of how that works. We'll just kind of breeze over that, and we'll just assume that we can accept that it matches your patterns. The question then that needs to be asked next is, where did those patterns come from? And essentially what they did is they went to the entire internet and they pulled all of the data together and they said, let's start to put all of this information into a place where we can then start to replicate those patterns. So then that asks the next question. Where did the internet data come from? It came from people. So when you're dealing with AI, it is trained on the patterns of people. So you need to talk to it like you would talk to a person. Meaning if you're ambiguous with AI, just as if you're ambiguous with a new intern, you're going to get kind of a weird result back. Where if you're really clear about it with AI, just as if you're clear with an intern, you're going to get a really specific result back. So the way you talk to it matters. And it matters because it is trained on patterns that are human in the way that we interact and the way we communicate. So I like to say there are four main things I talk about when I talk about how you talk to AI. The first one is that you need to basically give it a persona or give it some person to act like. So say, my favorite example is, go hiking, say in Yosemite. I want you to act like a professional trail guide. What are the best hikes in Yosemite? The reason you do that is because by saying act like a professional trail guide, you tell the AI to go out to all the data on the internet and pull back the information that was generated by professional trail guides. So it makes it smarter and it gives it context. So tell it who to act like. Then you need to give it kind of some details around what you're doing and go ahead and be detailed with it. The more details, the better. Because again, it references the information online so it can make a better answer. It can give you a better answer. So tell it to act like a professional. Give it the details about what you're doing. Then tell it what you don't want it to do. Give it some negative context. And so hey, act like a professional trail guide. I'm going on a hike with my 19-year-old and my 22-year-old kids, and they're pretty high energy. However, I'm from Indiana. In Indiana, hiking in mountains is probably an issue. You should know some things about me, like make sure I'm prepared and give it that context so that it can answer that for you. And then the last one is I actually like to ask AI to interview me. So say, interview me one question at a time till you have gotten enough information to answer my question appropriately. And it will then act as a professional trail guide and interview you back and forth, asking you questions to help get that better context. It gives it much, much more information so that you get a very specific, accurate output for the question you're trying to have it do.
That's amazing. I heard you talk about some of those points at an industry conference, and I thought that was so helpful. So I'm so glad you reiterated that. That's amazing. Let me also say, you said it's not magic, it's math. As an English major, I'm pretty sure those are both the same thing. So that part didn't help me.
Yeah.
No, that was great. Thank you, Daniel. Anything else you wanted to add there?
Yeah, and I would just say invite it to the table and to start listening and giving it as much context as possible. So that's often where we're encouraging people to start, and that's why we're building the product we've been building, is because we're inviting the process coach as our product to start listening to and observing all of these interactions that a team is having and watching the workflows, and then it's just going to get smarter. It's just like you're hiring somebody that was really good in another industry, in the employee benefits industry. They're going to take time to develop into, an employee benefits superstar, because they don't know what they don't know. And so you have to, even though that person's high quality, high caliber, you have to train them in your specific things. And so AI is very similar in that way.
One of my favorite things to do with AI is when you're telling it to act like a persona, tell it to act like one of your clients. Like, go out to LinkedIn or whatever that you can find that's publicly available about them, pull that in, give it to the AI and say, this is the person I'm going to be talking to. Act like them. I want you to act like this person. And here's what we're going to be talking about. Help give me the pushback or the obstacles that they're going to bring up in our conversation. It does a really good job.
We just did that. Jason and I were traveling to rural Illinois to talk with a large retail company. And we were just like, we don't know what we don't know here. What are going to be their biggest challenges that AI might be able to help with? And so we're literally talking to Claude, which is what we were using at the time. And one of the things Claude brought up we hadn't even thought about is like they likely have a huge shrinkage problem, which in retail means stolen or lost inventory. And we get into the meeting and they basically said we lose $30 million a year in lost or stolen inventory. But we were ready to talk about it. And we had been thinking about, okay, solutions or questions to ask around that because, just the short conversation with AI that helped inform us, based on the body of data it had of like potential issues. So I just think about that from an advisor standpoint, because one of the biggest values that advisors bring is they build these very strong relationships where they're supporting the business outcomes of their clients. And the more that you're empowered to really go in as an expert and understand, what they value, what makes them tick, the more likely you're going to be seen as a strategic advisor to them. And so AI is almost like a cheat code to help with some of that, to fast track where you're trying to get in the conversation.
Now, that's fascinating. I mean, it kind of ties into what I was going to ask you next. I know, Daniel, again, you did have some background in the benefits industry. Jason, not so much. I know that in conversations with you guys, it sometimes feels like drinking from a fire hose. We're learning all this new information, but I'm sure to some degree, both of you meeting with all of these benefits folks, I mean, this is a complex, fast changing industry, healthcare benefits. What have been some of the most surprising or eye opening things that you've discovered in your conversations with benefits folks, especially over the last few months or the last year or so?
Well, pretty much everything I learned, I look at Daniel and I'm like, can you translate that for me?
Yeah, I bet.
The challenge, Paul, there is like I was in a more traditional, primarily fully insured space. Like my company started to dabble in level funded and self-funded near the end of my tenure there. But then if you get off the train, and not keeping up with, okay, what opportunities are there in self-funded, I would say advisors that step out of that space and stop learning for 6 months. I mean, there's a lot changing right now. And so going to the conferences where I've seen you, Paul, the last few months, I'm drinking from the fire hose and like, okay, what's reinsurance again? And what's stop and like what's reference-based pricing and how does that fit in here? And so I think for us, it's, just keeping up with how do these players all play together and where are the biggest bottlenecks in these processes, because even the reformers in this space that are doing very transformational things, like we have a client here in Indiana that's seen as like a pioneer in this space, and he's doing these very phenomenal things for clients across the region and starting to impact, the government here in Indiana to start making some changes that only they can make in policy making. And there's still things that slow him down because there's bottlenecks in how all the vendors to make a self-funded plan work. And so if we can help just understand what those bottlenecks are and figure out how like AI can come in and help with that, that's going to be, I think, a huge win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I've been covering this industry for a long time and I still am always like, what does that mean? Like, I need to refresh, and, quickly Googling on the side. And I know that Lily, came into this industry pretty fresh out of school. And so she's been in that boat as well. So yeah, definitely a lot to learn, but that's a great answer.
Yeah, I would say I'm still in that boat, still learning every day. So kind of switching gears a little bit, but pulling out your crystal ball is never easy to predict the future, especially when it's something that evolves as quickly as AI. But we do have to ask, what are your predictions on where things are headed in the next few years with AI?
This is Jason's favorite question.
So let's think way out there, like impossibly long, like a whole 3 months from now. And significant advances in what are called AI agents. So what's starting to happen is everyone's familiar with like going to ChatGPT and writing a prompt. and you get a response back. And you can even then have kind of a conversation with it where you'll say, hey, I want you to help me solve a problem, and it will work with you back and forth to help solve that problem. Engineers said, what if we could create two AIs that knew how to talk to each other, and we told one of them, I want you to evaluate the output of the other one, kind of like the way a human would if you were having a chat conversation with it. And then we told it to just go ahead and solve the problem back and forth as quickly as it could without it working with a human at all. So those are essentially what are called agents. So they're creating an agent that evaluates the outcome. So you can say, hey, I want you to plan a trip out to Colorado for me. And then there's one that would use all the information it can find on the internet to evaluate whether or not it's a good trip. And then it creates another agent that would actually go out and do the planning and use all the information on the internet to do the planning. And so the planner goes out and does all the stuff it needs to do. And it says, hey, here's my itinerary evaluator. What do you think? And the evaluator reads through it all and goes, nah, this isn't good. And this isn't good. And this isn't good. Go try again. And then it goes, oh, okay. And it makes an update. And then it says, now what do you think? And that's like not sci-fi anymore. That's pretty real. Like that's going to be a foundation of business in the next 3 to 6 months.
And you expect us not to bring up Skynet. Come on.
Yeah, right? 1142, Daniel, 1142. So,
Thank you.
When you apply that to like one of the examples I've heard a number of advisors have asked me is I've used these tools where it gives, because they get back 100 different options for a client. And, it's like, okay, we could go fully insured, level funded, self-funded. And for each one, there could be 6 different vendors for each small aspect of that. So they're combing through 20 PDFs that are sometimes 30 to 50 pages a piece of information. And so if you just rely on, the one AI and say, hey, based on the data I've given you about this client, what they're doing currently, what their goals are, the AI will do a pretty good job, like just the one AI by itself, boiling down all the options and saying, well, based on your criteria, these seem to be like the top 5 options. But there are some times where I've seen the outputs of that be pretty, like, you're like, yeah, no, you missed this and this, similar to a new benefits advisor. You'd be like, yeah, you're not really looking at the full picture here. And that's where the power of the agent comes in, where that evaluation is happening, and then the end product is even better. Some advisors are scared of that because it's like, oh, well, they're doing my job for me and I have a license to be able to do that. And what I would push back and say, well, you're going to actually be able to do your job more for more people because you're not having to do all of that back end analysis that the AI agents are doing for you. And so that's probably the win there. And I think we're not there yet, but like Jason said, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, we will be there.
If you want to go way out, like a year, 2 years, let's go ahead and say 5 years from now, you're already starting to see like tablets and things like that don't have keyboards. I kind of predict the keyboard won't exist in 5 years. There just won't be a need for it. AI is already getting really good at handling conversation and allowing you just to talk to it and have it respond. It's only going to get faster and only going to get better. So at some point, it's going to be more cumbersome to type than it is going to be to just talk to your computer. That you're already starting to see some of that emerge, but it still kind of feels a little clunky in some places. I think that goes away. And so entire ways of interacting with our computers and our user interfaces are all going to be completely different.
That's really interesting. I was just thinking listeners will roll their eyes because I'm going to bring up books again. But, I love literature and books. And just thinking back, like there have been authors even clear back into the 19th century and beyond who would dictate, whose minds worked in such a way that they would prefer, rather than writing with a pen, to talk out loud. But it's for some people, that's going to be quite a mind shift, I would think, because many of us are so used to sitting at the keyboard, backspace, delete, copy and paste, move around. So it's a really interesting thing to think about, not only how we're shaping technology, but how it continues to kind of reshape us too.
It's going to be interesting. I imagine we're going to find a resurgence of pen and paper.
Hey, I like that.
Now, it might be digital where it can communicate with your computer, but there's going to be some form of we're just writing again, because there are people that want that. But a lot of people are just going to want to, it's just going to be more efficient to talk to. I mean, Star Trek always had the little tap and talk and, hey, computer, do this. Like, that's not sci-fi. Like, that's totally doable these days.
No, that's interesting. It is one of the interesting things about sci-fi is you wonder to some degree how much it shapes the designs and the ideas that we have, because like you mentioned, so many different things. Star Trek comes up a lot. I remember one of our keynote speakers a few years ago talked about a tool that you could like pass over the human body and it would be able to like detect different illnesses and ailments and stuff like that. And it's just fascinating, like chicken or the egg, which one is driving which.
Yeah, we still don't have lightsabers.
I know that might be the
So,
So we ask this question a lot, specifically around the benefits industry, but it's also true for you guys. I mean, these industries are moving fast. They require a lot of dedication, hard work, long hours. How do you both kind of stay motivated? You touched on this a little bit, Jason, at the beginning, but what gets you up out of bed every morning and excited to do this work, despite the fact that, there is a grueling nature to some of it?
Yeah, we're talking about employees and their families here. And, just to share a personal example, I think, I have a kid that has some special needs, and it's his healthcare like is very expensive, and it's stuff that going through insurance has, and we have traditional insurance through my wife's employer, just hasn't been helpful. And so we're spending a lot of cash to get him the care that he needs. And I think, and we are people that are in, the privileged status. My wife and I both have really good jobs. And, I think impacting this industry has like huge ripple effects for not just people like me, but people especially that we are. Our friend Tim Tebow, who we mentioned earlier, would be like called the most vulnerable people in our society. And if we can move the needle on some of this, that we're going to enhance their lives as well. And so I think that this healthcare is a matter of like life and death and well-being in a lot of ways. And so that's what gets me out of bed, and to support the advisors that are helping, employees and vulnerable people and at employers to get the care that they need and move healthcare to be more of like the human right that it is, and to make it more affordable and accessible.
It's a great answer. Jason, how about you?
It's always been around people. So I know I'm in technology, and I know I deal with computers. But at the end of the day, it's been around how do we help people be more human? How do we let them be able to engage in relationships and conversations and solving problems for other people? And so that's where the idea of meaningful work really came to for me. Is work can actually be a really fulfilling thing. It doesn't have to be like work gets a negative connotation often, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a very fulfilling thing when you're making an impact and making a difference. And this industry specifically, I think there are a lot of individuals that are doing just that. And so that's motivating, because it's not just about, slinging some code and making math work better. It's tied directly to people. And that's what gets me up. That's what I get excited about. That's what's motivating to me, is how can we get people to be able to help more people? And I think technology is a real powerful tool to make that happen when pointed in the right direction and put towards the right problems.
I love that. Well, we're about to move on to the second part of our interview, but before we do that, we always end the first part with finishing a sentence in a few words. So, finish the sentence in a few words. The thing that makes me most excited about the future is
people's creativity.
That's a good one.
Love it. All right, Daniel, you threw down the gauntlet.
I would say the move toward that leaders are making toward self-care being the foundation of their care for other people.
Love that. So you guys are nailing this.
Yeah.
Good answers.
Hit the curveball out of the park. All right. Well, now we're going to move on to the second part of our interview, which I always call the fun part because it's all about getting to know you guys. So are we ready?
Let's go.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So we work in a very demanding and fast-paced field, especially with technology and all of that. So how do y'all relax and refresh?
For me, it's the outdoors, getting outdoors with my kids. I have a 10, almost 5 and 2-year-old, and just regardless of the weather, spending as much time outdoors and try to get them on hikes as much as possible. And for myself, it's trail runs, just getting onto the trail and sweating, getting dirty. That's the thing for me that does it.
You and Dave Chase are out there running on the trails. I always feel good that I'm just on the trails walking, and then you guys are running by me. We talked about this with him. I'm like, come on, man. Oh, that's great. How about you, Jason?
Well, I am a very tall individual. I am 6'6", and I love sand volleyball. So I play in a sand volleyball league here. Actually, I'm in two. I play 2 to 3 times a week. There is nothing like smashing a ball on the opposing team to make you feel better about yourself.
I
So
love that. I also play volleyball, so it's fun to hear that you're still enjoying it.
yes.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, regular listeners know that we're always on the hunt for good recommendations. So books, movies, TV shows, podcasts, we're open, but we'd love to hear one or two from each of you. So what have you got for us?
Yeah, as it relates to the topic today, I point people to the AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. And he highlights a lot of what we talked about for leaders, executive teams to just invite AI to the table, and gives some very practical applications of that. So that would be one on the AI topic specific. Jason, what about for you?
I am pulling up my Audible.
And to be clear, it doesn't have to be. It can be business related. It can also just be your favorite mystery novel or thriller or whatever.
Well, I will tell you, I like sci-fi and I like fantasy. So I enjoy reading a lot of that. I enjoy the Brandon Sanderson series, or any of them.
I almost predicted that. Yep.
Yep.
When he said you like fantasy, I almost called him out.
Yep. So
Nice.
all of those, read them all. Those are really good. Actually, one that I got into recently is by J.M. Clark. It's called Mark of the Fool. And I have really enjoyed that series. That one has been very fun. It's about a hero, a set of heroes that get marked by a god with a thing on their 18th birthday, and they have no choice but to go fight a bunch of evil demon type creatures. But it's really lighthearted, it's funny, and explores the idea of being thrust into leadership roles, whether you want to be or not. Really good series. I've enjoyed that. Have you read 10X is Easier Than 2X? Are you familiar with that?
I've heard about it, but I've not yet read it.
Yeah, so that one by Dr. Benjamin Hardy has really shaped my thinking. The idea that in order to grow a business, or in order to grow anything in general, it is actually easier to think about what it would take to grow it by 10 times than it is to think about what it would take to grow it by double. And he breaks down a lot of the science, and there's a lot of practical reasons around it. But the gist of it is we can kind of fathom how to go from 1x to 2x. But to go to 10x, you kind of have to throw out everything you know, and you have to rethink it. And so that book has been really influential in the way that I think about growing a business, because it's forced me to challenge my assumptions about what growth really looks like.
Wow, that's fascinating. Those are great answers. Daniel, just wanted to make sure. Anything else you wanted to throw in there?
Yeah, so kind of based on the pen and paper comment earlier, I love reading fiction and paper books, especially when you're in the benefit space in the fourth quarter. Like, you need a way to get your cortisol levels down to have a good night of sleep, and that's kind of my go-to. And the recent series I reread is called Wildwood by Colin Malloy, and he's the lead singer of The Decemberists, and he wrote this. It was intended to be like teenage fantasy, but I got a lot out of it as an adult, so highly recommend that. It's a trilogy. So
Nice. Yeah, I've actually read the first one of those and agree with you. I think it is billed as YA, but like is so often the case with YA, there's a lot more to it. So yeah. You guys, you fit right in around here. We both got good recommendations. Well, to close things out, I just wanted to kind of touch on, I've been to your area a few times. I love Indianapolis. I feel like it's one of the underrated cities in the U.S. And, you can't mention Indianapolis, at least I can't, without talking about St. Elmo's Steakhouse, which I love. In particular, their shrimp cocktail. I know that they're famous for it, but I would argue for a very good reason. I dream about that stuff. So in addition to that, any other kind of hidden gems or other parts of Indianapolis or Indiana that people who are visiting might not know about that you guys would want to share with listeners?
I've learned not to eat St. Elmo's cocktail sauce at a networking event when you're trying to have a conversation. So that's for another story.
You're like, I'm not nervous. I'm just sweating because of the heat.
In our backyard here, we have a park called Eagle Creek Park. It's actually an Indianapolis city park, and I think it's the biggest per square feet city park in the country. And it's sort of like, it's a hidden gem in terms of like outdoorsy stuff, I would say. So that's me being an outdoors person, when I'm not in Colorado, we have to find our little oases here in the Midwest because we don't have the mountains in our backyard. So.
Right. Well, I assume with a big park like that, Leslie Knope was involved. I have to make my Parks and Rec reference.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did, Paul.
Nice. Thank you.
Yep.
There's a fun little place in Broad Ripple called the Jazz Kitchen. It's dinner and it's great food, but then what's really fun is they bring in world famous jazz artists and they perform for an hour or two after dinner. And I have enjoyed every time I've been there. It's just you hear incredible musicians, and they're they're real deal, playing the music in front of you. And it's kind of a small, intimate place, like 250 at the most are in there. So it's a real fun place. I enjoy that one.
Love it. Those are great recommendations. Now I got to get back to Indy to start checking out some of these places. Thank you.
I know, I've never been, so now I have my list of places to go when I'm there. Next time I
Yes.
plan my vacation. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I think we had a great conversation, and I'm really excited to see where everything goes.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Got a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. For all of our listeners, please subscribe to Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you want to rate us, we'd love your feedback. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me over at pwilson@benefitspro.com, or you can email Lily at lpeterson@alm.com.
And thank you to our producer, Zach. Join us again next time for a new episode of Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro. Until then, thanks for listening.